Welcome to, well, I guess if you're on the Res podcast feed, don't change it. We didn't make a mistake. Welcome to the Westminster Effects Doxology podcast, where we exist for the glory of God and the tone of his people. I'm Cody Fields. Go buy stuff for your guitar at westminstereffects.com and join the discussion on the Westminster Effects Green Room on Facebook. And do your thing, Bradley.
If you're listening on the Res Faith podcast, welcome to that podcast. And we do not sell anything. We do not have pedals to buy. We do not have a Facebook lounge. But we're glad that you're here. And I'm Bradley. I'm one of the pastors here at Resurrection Church in Greer, South Carolina.
Yeah, and I'm one of the deacons here at Resurrection Church.
A lot of lines crossing here.
A lot of lines, a lot of worlds colliding, and we are joined by our newest deacon, Brent Baker. Brent, welcome to both podcasts at once.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So, how do we do this now?
I think it'd be cool. I think it'd be cool, first of all, to talk about like history a little bit, because you talk about lines crossing. Like I didn't know you until 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, about 2.5 years when we started coming.
Yeah.
But it's almost like we were, ships passing in the night because of, so talk about like your background, where you grew up, and church that you don't have to mention names if you don't want to, but like a little bit of context.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm actually local. A lot of people around here are not local.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
I grew up here in Greer, went to Greer High School, and my wife Lena, same thing. She's local as well. And so both of us actually grew up in the same church.
Here in Greenville.
Yeah, here in Greenville. And I have the Pentecostal church.
Yeah, it's a Pentecostal church.
And so, my background is in that, and really goes far back in my family, which I think is where some of our stuff crosses lines. But on both sides of my parents, back 100 years in the Pentecostal circles. So.
Yeah, so the church that you and your wife Lena both grew up in, you're younger than me, so you were maybe not there, but like there were several occasions that I went to the youth group over there.
Yeah.
Because I had.
Oh, really?
I had a friend. I had a friend that was also grew up in that church, and just I don't know. It's just like my parents had some friends that went there. Your mom worked for my dad. Is that right?
My dad worked at your dad's company.
Your dad worked for my dad, in my dad's company, and so there were just all these ways in which our kind of our history touched together, but we never really knew each other. And then, but we do share that Pentecostal background. Like I grew up in Pentecostal church too, and my generations back, like steeped in the Pentecostal church. And
my parents met at Emmanuel, where you and Mary met, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Where my parents met too. And
I did not know all of this lore.
Yeah.
Somehow. Yeah. This is blowing my mind right now.
And then here's what's crazy is, I don't know, this might have been 5 years ago, because y'all have been at Res 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Right. So it might have been as 5 years ago. I get this email from a lady named Lena. Don't know Lena. I don't know who Lena is, but she's been listening to the Westminster Effects Doxology podcast. Your name is too long. She's been listening to this podcast that you and I have been doing for however many years now.
Been a minute. Yeah. I think 16 or 17
is when we started. So we're getting on 10 years now of this thing.
Close to it.
I forget how. Do you remember how she found the podcast?
Yeah, there's a story there.
Tell that story.
Okay, so I mean, it really goes back much further. Lena and I were actually talking about this week. How did we kind of, it was really, I guess, God directing us. But, 15 years ago, I used to listen to a lot of, just talk radio and stuff in the area, and was listening to a local show that Dr. Tony Beam did. and your friend Corey Truax would fill in from time to time there. And so I was like, oh, I like Corey. He's much more reasonable than some of these talking heads and stuff that you see.
One of the best dressed men I've ever met.
Ever, yes. Or festooned to
festooned.
To keep
shout out
theme.
to Corey and his festoonedness.
So, I just started listening to that and Corey got his own show and started listening to him. And so Lena the same. If you know Lena, she's really into podcasts now, talk radio then, listens to everything you can think of, from political stuff to, true crime or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Anyways,
I was like, well, you might like Corey. You should listen to him. So she started listening and actually ended up listening to him more often than I did. And he had a podcast that started and everything. And at some point, he came on your podcast. And maybe it was a dual podcast thing or whatever.
Yep.
I think it was early on. I was looking back through this week at the podcast episodes. I think it was like one of the first 20 episodes I think you had Corey on. And so when she listened to that episode, she was like, well, this Westminster Effects podcast sounds interesting too. I might start listening to that. And so that's kind of how she started listening to your podcast. And that's kind of over time. Alina, she's awesome. And she has a lot of insight into things. And so she'll listen to a lot of theology type stuff or spiritual related stuff, and then we have some great conversations from that. So as she started listening to your podcast, she's like, hey, they're talking about these things, let's what do you think about that? This is a little bit different than what we're used to. Or she's like, I really like the way they're doing this in their church, or what do you think about this? So we started having a lot of conversations, even though I wasn't a regular listener. I would listen to stuff here and there. She's like, you should listen to this episode. But we started having a lot of conversations, and a lot of the things that we were talking about came from conversations you guys were having on this podcast. So that's kind of how.
Yep. And I think that she reached out to me and asked to meet. And so she came and met with me at my office. And I don't remember the whole of the conversation, but I think that I had referenced at some point that I had a Pentecostal background, and was apparently talking about things that I wrestled with in the Pentecostal church theologically, experientially, things that raised questions for me that eventually led to me distancing myself from that whole deal. And I think that Lena, at least at the time, maybe you too, were wrestling with similar things. And so she came and met with me and had some questions. Again, I don't remember the whole context, but she was really, wrestling is the right word, wrestling with some theological things, some ecclesiological things. And then I didn't hear from her for a while. And then she emailed sort of out of the blue again. And then before I knew it, you guys were here. And we were having dinner at my house, and we were talking about our backgrounds, and you guys have been here for 2.5 years at Res Church, but I know that was not an easy transition for you.
No,
I mean, share as much about that as you want, like as you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like I said, Lena and I grew up in the same church, and her family started attending when she was maybe 5, and I think my family when I was 6. So we've known each other our whole life, and so by the time we ended up changing churches, we had been there close to 35 years probably.
Yeah,
and so all of our family goes there. All of our family's pretty local, so pretty much all of them still attend at our previous church. But for us, it was more about, there were a few things. Really a big part of it too was just location. I mean, we live, if you're familiar with the area, we live, North Taylor's, North Greenville County, kind of near Lake Robinson. And that church is more central Greenville.
Yeah.
And even the demographics of it kind of shifted to South Greenville. So, some of our best friends were like Malden, Simpsonville area. And so just hard to connect with people over time.
Yep.
We led a small group for many years, and there's a lot of times where we just couldn't get people to come to our house because we're too far away from everything.
Yeah.
So we did, our kids were kind of getting into youth age, and we wanted them as well to be able to connect with other kids that were kind of we wanted to be in the community. So that played a big role.
Yeah.
And so, we kind of, it was really several years of just kind of praying, what do we do? I didn't feel like we could really leave the church very easily with all the connections we had, and it was just kind of our life. We were there a lot. And maybe we can get into this, but I also served on the board of deacons there, and so we were very connected. Lena kind of led preschool kids ministry, or at least coordinated all the stuff for preschool. So, pulling out of that was going to be very difficult. But there were definitely some things that we wanted to look for in a church to transition to. So, we spent a lot of time, like I said, really like 2 or 3 years kind of praying, is this the right time? What are we looking for? What are we, where's God leading us? And so, it just kind of came to a point where we felt like the Lord was really saying, now's the time. And we didn't necessarily have a church that we knew we were going to jump into. But at that point, we were very familiar with Resurrection Church. So we felt like the Lord was saying, at least let's start there and attend that and see where it goes from there. So.
And what I appreciate about what you're saying too is it took you several years. This was not, preacher said something that kind of rubbed you the wrong way, and 2 weeks later you're gone, right? This was a long, drawn out process, because changing a covenant community is a big deal, where, a lot of times in American Christianity, we don't treat it like a big deal.
No.
Where it's kind of dumbed down. This is a totally optional thing. If you feel like showing up, then cool. If not, then whatever. But you spent 35 years there.
Yeah.
That's a long, long time to be in one church. And so I appreciate how this was a process for you that you took seriously. You weren't flippant about it.
Yeah, it was. And we had great relationships with everyone there. So we're not mad at the pastor.
You're not dogging on anybody right now.
Still have great relationships.
Right.
It was doing that with those connections was quite a challenge.
Yeah.
I appreciated that too, as you guys were. I mean, you didn't like drag your feet, but you slow rolled it. Because it was a big deal, and you had great love for the church that you grew up in, and the people there, and even the pastor there, and people change churches nowadays like they're changing their shirt, right? It's just like so flippant and casual about that. And I just, here now, you becoming a deacon here, and candidly, that's part of the consideration for us when we are recognizing leadership within the church and affirming and appointing people to leadership. We want to know that people are committed people. And I think the way you and Lena transitioned was a testament to us as to the kind of people that you are, the kind of commitment that you make to a church. And so I thought that was huge.
I also think it probably helped that you knew a couple people coming in. Like, you didn't know me coming in. You knew of me.
Right.
You had some conversations with Bradley, but now both of our fellow deacon, Jonathan McCullough, you've known him for a minute too.
I have known Jonathan and his family. Yeah. So Jonathan's really good friends with my brother.
Yeah.
And then also Jonathan's mom has a teacher when I was at Greer.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And where Jonathan and I have been BFF since we were 5, and so it's like we're not going anywhere. So come on, we're good, And now you're 2 seasons into our men's league basketball team, and
your brother, by the way, can ball. I mean,
stupid. It's stupid.
I mean, no offense, Andrew, if you're listening, but he's not the tallest guy in the world, okay? But, man, can he get a rebound? And it's like all of a sudden there's these towering men in our over 30 men's basketball, and he comes out with the ball. It never ceases to amaze me how good he is. So,
Yeah. And I've always said he
Sidetrack.
got that from playing against me as well. That's it. Right? I've got the height, he's got the athletic ability.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. So into the deacon process.
Yeah.
So what was your conversation like? Who came to you? Were you expecting it? All that kind of stuff.
Sure, yeah. So Zeke reached out to me and just to grab lunch. And so we had lunch, and he, he conveyed the news that I was being considered, and asked me, what, to pray about it and consider it. Certainly came out of nowhere. I was not an expectation that I had, for sure.
Knowing Zeke, he probably just dropped it so nonchalantly. It's like, so you want to be a deacon?
It probably was something like that.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it definitely caught me off guard. I wasn't, had not been thinking in that space at all. With us kind of having transitioned to res, just the last 2.5 years, really, there were a lot of changes from what we had been doing for many years. And so, to me, it felt like there was a lot to pray about and consider and process through. And so, I actually felt bad because I told Zeke, I'll pray about it and get back to you. And it took a couple of weeks. I don't know if he was expecting an answer sooner, but, I really,
that was a testament, I think, to your, intentionality.
Yeah. I mean, I really felt like I needed to kind of assess, where we stood with everything. And I went back to the website, pulled down the covenants and bylaws, and kind of went line by line. Appreciate all the references, the proof text in there.
Yeah.
And so, do I agree with this to everything? And actually doing that made me feel much more confident. I was like, after kind of reading through that, I was like, okay, I absolutely am sure about all of this. So
I think that's awesome. And I'll just say this, so we had a deacon who rotated off, the council of deacons. He had been serving for quite a while, and it was time. It wasn't anything wrong. It was just he had served well for a lot of years, and it was time.
So like 13 years?
Yeah, it was like 13 years. And really our bylaws only have provision for 5, but we can extend that year by year by consensus if there are major things going on. And that particular deacon, we can talk about. I mean, Brian, those that are listening to the Res Faith that are from Res know Brian. I added it up. It was like we went through 6 or 7 staff hires, major building renovation, in the early stages of the lawsuit that we've been dealing with, and a property dispute lawsuit with a previous denomination that we were associated with, and like just a lot of really, really big things. And he had served well, and it was just time, and I said to the deacons, I was like, y'all need to, like, the bylaws, the deacons are supposed to find deacons. Like, that's the way our bylaws work. I was like, y'all need to find somebody. And it was like almost immediate. We want Brent Baker. Like it was like, and it's so amazing to hear, like, you weren't looking for this. It's not like you were, politicking around the church, shaking hands and kissing babies, trying to make your way in. You just
vote for Brent.
Right. Vote for Brent, t-shirts and stuff. Like you just served in the church. You'd become a part of the church. You joined a small group. You and your family became members, and Lena serves in Res Kids here, and you've served in Res Kids, and you've just become a part of the family. And I think as that happened, giftedness was recognized. The meeting of the qualifications listed in Scripture for deacon was recognized, and that to me is the way it should happen. Whether a congregation votes on it or a council of deacons votes on it, I have room for either one of those in my ecclesiological borders. I obviously prefer one over the other, but I don't think that churches that vote congregationally on everything are wrong or heretical. But it's just how we do it. The deacons find deacons to deacon with them. and they wanted you, which is really amazing. And it wasn't like I was coming in trying to strong arm them into, because I want Brent Baker on the. When you and the other deacons were like, Brent, I was like, absolutely, love that. Love that guy, love his family. I thought it was great.
Sorry, I don't remember who brought it up first, but then it's like, all right, does he meet this qualification? Yes. What about this one? You get to the one about the kids. Well, like, I'm leading the Bible study for the high school boys. It's like, well, his son's not an idiot. So at least
which
with
is
me.
Cody's way of saying he's really impressed with your son. But that's how.
Thanks, Jackson.
That's how Cody talks about things.
Right. He's not cutting up and not paying attention. He's not a total moron. I'll give him that. But he's contributing to the discussion and stuff like that. And so it's like, yeah, I can vouch for that. And we just kind of went through it like on the spot.
Yeah.
Honestly, and it was just like, oh yeah, all right, Zeke, go talk to him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think when we did, your official installation this past Sunday, and Jason, one of our deacons, said this. It's like, it's not that the current council of deacons and elders is providing leadership for the church. It's that the Lord's providing leadership for the church, and we're just recognizing what the Lord is doing. I think that's the way it's supposed to happen, regardless of what the parliamentary procedures are. Right?
Yeah.
I think that's you recognize giftedness in the church, and then you affirm it. It's what Paul says to Timothy. We were just finished 2 Timothy in a Bible study we do here, and Paul says to Timothy, fan into flame the gift that's in you according to the laying on of hands. And I think the laying on of hands is not this magical, mystical, like impartation thing, as much as it's a symbolic of recognizing the Spirit's work in someone,
right? Like
Timothy, like Brent,
right?
So,
and my understanding is you have deaconed before, right? So when did that happen? What was that like for you?
Sure. Yeah. So
minus the fist fights and the board meetings. I'm just kidding.
The deacon board's not always as unified as it can be. But yeah, I mean, at our previous church, I did. It was a little bit different structure there. They had it was more of a congregational election. Nominees were put forth and then elected. And it was a kind of, you serve for 3 years and take a year off, and then you can be elected again. So I actually first started serving when we had a deacon that had moved away and left. They had an opening and just asked me to fill in, and then was elected for a couple more times after that. So ended up serving around maybe 8 years or so out of 10 or 12, something like that.
Gotcha. Yeah.
What was the structural difference, if you don't mind me asking, compared to Res?
Just the general overall structure within the
like what the deacons did, and I know you're early on in your tenure here, so was the role of deacon seen a little differently than maybe it is here, or was it pretty much the same?
I think it was similar. They definitely were involved in managing the resources, the stuff of the church. There was a little more spiritual leadership involved, maybe what we would put to some of the elders. So not so much teaching as much as being up front and praying over the congregation and some leadership in those areas too.
Yeah.
There was not.
Go ahead.
There was not an eldership either, so it was kind of the structure was a little different than here at Res. So the board was more of the elected deacons plus the lead pastor. That was kind of the oversight over everything.
And I think that's more common in this part of the world, is that you've got a senior pastor and you got deacons, and the deacons kind of function in this hybrid role of elder, of what we would understand biblically as the role of an elder versus the role of a deacon. And we've kind of parsed that out here a little bit more, so that the deacons are focused on stewardship and service, and the elders are focused more on the ministry of the word and prayer. And because that's what we see in Acts 4.
Yeah,
Acts 6:4, excuse me.
For the political nuts, like the constitutional term would be separation of powers.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And the Constitution actually derived that from Scripture, with the difference with deacons and elders, and in the Torah you do see separation of priests and civil authority, and stuff like that. And when you actually have different people with different responsibilities, it keeps either group from being tyrannical because there's checks, right? It really helps prevent abuses. Now, obviously, if you have healthy elders keeping each other accountable, healthy deacons keeping each other accountable, that's one level. And then there's the group of deacons and elders saying, well, hold on, elders, you're not spending money. That's not your job, right? You can't give yourself a bonus, Bradley. That's our job.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And that's like, it's interesting because, we'll talk about in Discover Res that my dad teaches our membership class, and we'll mention we're not a voting church, we're elder ruled and deacons do the resources and stuff like that. And some people will start to ask questions, and inevitably they start to loosen. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about approving the budget. And it just frees our people up to go about their own kingdom work outside the walls of the church, which is, I think, freeing for everybody ultimately.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
Well, I think that like you said, the separation of powers and when you have, and I don't want to sound disparaging, but I think when you have a senior pastor CEO model with a board that's amenable to the senior pastor, and the senior pastor is somehow amenable to them, but it's a first among equals, and that one body is doing everything from spiritual care, spiritual discipline, and stewardship of resources. I think that is not as safe. You said this on Sunday when you were kind of teeing up Brent's installation. Any leadership structure can be abused.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if it's a congregational vote on everything. When the pastor can blow his nose, let's take a vote. It doesn't matter what the structure is. It can be abused.
Yep.
And so our desire has just been to be as biblical as possible. And within the scriptures, we see this separation of duties, separation of responsibilities. And I think by extension, it's a separation of powers. If you let it be that. It's like we've talked about it on the podcast before. And, when there's a staff hire, like a deacon being appointed, the deacons would recommend someone, and then the elders can approve or deny that appointment. When a staff hire is being made, the elders would recommend someone to be brought on staff, but the deacons get to approve or not deny the salary package. So there is this check and balance thing going on. And, we read in Acts 6 that the first deacons were to be, quote, men full of the Holy Spirit.
Yep.
So we're not talking about just analytical, business-minded people. We're talking about people like you that are full of the Spirit. So you're going to be discerning, not just financially, but spiritually when it comes time to be a part of the deacons doing their part in things like hiring a staff person or approving a budget, or we're going to launch into this expansion of facilities in a capital campaign, perhaps. Those all require spiritual discernment. And so I just think it's it's really been amazing, the unity that we have had as a church.
Yeah.
Through some of the most challenging things. I don't want to say difficult days, like they're heavy and we're sad and we're mourning and grieving. No, I think our church is thriving, but we're facing some of the most difficult challenges we've ever faced. Yeah. Good problems, if you will. And I'm sure there's enough church experience in this room to say we've seen churches face, quote, good problems and there be division over good problems.
Yep.
We haven't had that, praise God. And I think at least some of that is owing to the biblical leadership structure here.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And how that works together.
Yeah. And you haven't experienced it just yet in person, like a quarterly meeting or something, but you've seen it in the emails that you've already been included in as, if somebody has a question or pushback, then it's just stated. Like, we have the question, or we have the disagreement. Can you elaborate on this and get me on the same page with you, as opposed to it's my way or the highway.
Right.
And so I don't know how much you could speak to that, but to that unity. But if you want to, go ahead.
I've seen, just briefly, but certainly, but even as just a member of the congregation, it's pretty clear that the leadership is unified. And, we've only been at Res for 2.5 years, so we've missed a lot of maybe some of the big things of the past. Maybe there wasn't that unity there. And I know in my experience, being a deacon in the past, it's there's a lot of issues that can cause disunity. And so it's really a blessing to have the leadership on the same page on big issues.
Yeah. And I guess to close us out, like the entire story of basically y'all are here in a roundabout way because I started this stupid little podcast. Which is, do you know how humbling that is? Where I already get a couple of emails or messages a year where someone's changed churches or they've reevaluated a theological position because this guitar gear builder in Greer, South Carolina decided to start a theology podcast. And this is particularly fresh for me because there's been a couple of Twitter accounts, and I think even Paul Washer said something along the lines of, your podcast doesn't matter. Get over yourself. And I'm in a group chat with some other Christian podcasters, particularly in the Reformed space. And everything that happens there stays there, but I don't think they'll mind this. I had a back and forth on there with Brandon Wood, who runs the Eschatology Matters YouTube channel. And he's like, no, every like, every view, and every subscriber, and every click is a soul. All of those matter tremendously. And now we have 4 souls here because of these efforts that God used somehow. That's not to puff me up or anything. It's kind of weird on that level. Like, obviously happy to have you here. But does that make sense to either of y'all? 'Cause,
Absolutely.
I'm not used to these kinds of things.
Yeah, not to puff you up more, but it did make a huge difference in us. And then when we listened to it, and it's particularly Lena listened to it for years without ever thinking we would change churches.
Right.
It was just, okay, here's some really good discussion on these important things.
Right.
And these are things we need to consider. And so it prompted a lot of discussion. And then when we got to the point where we're like, you know what, we might find another church, we also had a basis for what Resurrection Church does. And and not just theologically, but even with polity and church administration. And I know some of the episodes with like Stephen or Ethan, you know, those things really stand out to us as, hey, okay, I really like what Ethan's saying in the way student ministry is done in this intentional way. And, this is where I want my kids to be part of something like this. And so, like I said, Lena kind of listened to it for years, but when we, kind of prayed about coming here, y'all are thinking I'm crazy, but I went back and binged every episode in the 2 weeks we were praying about, what to do, because I'm, so by the time we stepped foot in the door,
you literally binged every episode in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was on 2X, so I was really. Actually, I told Lena I think I told you too. Our first day, our first service, we were here. I was like, man, Bradley speaks really slow in person because you're used to listening not a 2X. So, but I'm kind of maybe too thorough, but I really wanted to kind of understand fully what was going on. So. I think it was meaningful to us in that way too.
I think he's going to be okay as a deacon.
I love your thoroughness.
Yeah.
And I think, for everybody listening to this on the Res Faith that's part of our church, to know that this is the kind of person that is joining our council, this thorough, humble, thorough, thoughtful, intentional kind of leader. I think that,
Yeah.
I mean, that boosts my confidence
Yeah.
as a part of this church, because I'm as much a part of it as anybody else, and that increases my confidence. So I love that.
Budget meetings might take a smidge longer,
No,
but I'm here for it.
But that I mean, you know, I'm not over spiritualizing. Maybe there are days ahead where we need to slow down.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Like don't miss that when the Lord knows what's coming. And there have been seasons where we needed to make decisions really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be seasons like that again, but the Lord may be preparing us now to slow down on some things, because there's some stuff that's going to require that kind of intentionality, and that is just how God's providence works.
Yeah. I'm not opposed to that at all.
Not either.
Not at all. So, I normally ask where people can, find you. Like, you haven't written a book.
No.
Like, you don't have.
I don't get on much social media.
You sit like 2 or 3 rows behind me at church.
Yeah.
Come see him on a Sunday morning.
Right.
Please don't follow me on social media.
That's fantastic.
That's amazing. Don't follow me.
Yeah. So don't follow Brent on social media. You can find him in about 3 or 4 rows back.
On the right side?
On the right side, if you're looking out. And yeah, he might have a Res Kids shirt on, or and his 2 beautiful children. We mentioned that, right? Like, your kids are just awesome. That such, like, I don't see just a hint of anxiousness in them. They just seem like such solid people. And I'm watching them even the last 2.5 years, especially Jackson, how much he's grown. I mean,
yeah.
They're growing up, man, and it's awesome. It's awesome to see. Sweet family.
You want to do your outro first?
Yeah, I usually just end with, like, thanks for listening. Res Faith, love y'all.
Go love God, love your neighbor, make some music. We'll see you next time.